Welcome to another episode of CPOV Autographs. I, of course, am Matt, aka Stormageddon. And in the up top, before we jump into this week's episode, I am going to once again just mention that there are no more shout outs at the top of the episode for Patreon because I have shuttered my Patreon. And I go a couple episodes back into a deep dive of why, but essentially the gist is I just felt like I wasn't fulfilling on extra content. I'm grateful for my supporters, and if they want to still continue to support like they were on Patreon, they can subscribe to my Twitch page or support me through Ko-fi, both of which are at www.djstormageddon.com, along with all the other stuff that I do. But again, thank you for those who supported me there. I did appreciate it while I had it. You literally helped keep the lights on at some point. Anyway, enough about that. On to this week's episode. I'm chatting with the incredible Sebastian Crane. Sebastian and I first met at FlameCon a few years back. He is delightful. He has a Patreon called the Hellfire Club, where he is diving into the queer, erotic, and occult. It's really awesome with monthly meetups and essays and research. It's really cool. We talk about it more in this episode. I've also just known Sebastian through the burlesque scene and through the queer space, and we've been mutual Twitter followers for ages, and so it was really awesome to get on a call with him and chat and talk about all the cool stuff he does. He does photography and is a ghost tour guide, like just one of the most interesting, cool, and incredibly handsome humans I've ever met. So enough about me gushing. Why don't we let you hear it from Sebastian himself as I chat with the incredible Sebastian Crane. When I was setting up this interview, the two of us have never had a one-on-one conversation before, except on Twitter.
I know. Yes, and I think I've only seen you across a D&D table once.
Correct.
Before the calamity happened.
Right, correct. Yeah, we had first actually met at, what was it, FlameCon. I can't even remember how many years ago now. 2 years probably, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was for mutual friend Lute Alfred Douglas's incredible campaign that was supposed to be a one-shot that ended up becoming an ongoing campaign after that, which was delightful.
Those things tend to happen.
They do. For my listeners just tuning in, because who knows where I'll find this in the edit, I intro as I see fit. It is my show, damn it. I'm talking to the incredible Sebastian Crane. Sebastian, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I've been really excited to talk to you because I've been fascinated by the kind of stuff that you're doing online and the new Patreon that you started. But I think I want to start by asking you about your time as a ghost tour guide. Because while I know ghost tours, they've been around for ages, they do them everywhere, I've never actually been on one and don't know anything about them. So I'd love if you could tell me and the listeners a little bit about them.
Absolutely. So by night, I'm a ghost tour guide in Salem, Massachusetts. And what a city to be a ghost tour guide in, because we are deeply, deeply haunted in every sense of the word. A typical night for me, there's 6 stops. We do the downtown loop, and there's so many more ghosts to talk about than what we cover, but my tour, I get to tailor it with the company that I work at. They're really awesome that way, so I can sort of talk about whatever interests me. I keep my tour to strictly historic ghosts that have to do with the Salem witch trials because, and that's really what people are coming here curious about. Sure. No matter their level of familiarity, everybody sort of comes here to sort of look at the historic car crash, the train wreck that you just can't seem to look away from, which is, of course, the witch hysteria of 1692. Oh, it is so... I love giving ghost tours because of the people who take them, because they're into that sort of thing. You just get cobblestones, late night. You do get your history, but also sort of peppered through with this element of the paranormal. We have so many ghost stories. We have poltergeists, like the ghost of Giles Corey, who is absolutely notorious here. He was the only person in the witch trials who was not, or the victim of the witch trials who was not hanged. He was pressed to death at this really terrible end at the hands of this terrible sheriff in town. So his ghost is apparently like wandering, that kind of thing. So there's a lot to talk about, and it's heavy stuff as a guide, but it's always really fascinating, the conversations that it sort of facilitates with people at the end. I don't know if I'm exactly doing a good job of describing what a ghost tour is. I'm mostly talking about my experiences and kind of the flavor, but I love a tour at night. It sets it's a completely different atmosphere than you would have doing a tour in the day, because everything's quieter.
Sure.
You get the streets to yourself, that kind of thing. I don't know if I would ever do like a straight historical tour now that I've done like paranormal historical tours, because it is just it's just another certain something, and I feel like you can really get into things that people wouldn't hear in museums. Sure. And you get people asking like the real questions that they might not feel like they had permission to ask, during a daytime tour or something like that. And that's the kind of history that really compels me, the stuff that might be considered, taboo to ask about, or maybe even heavier, sensitive, and the naughty stuff too. I get so many like Satan questions. It's delightful.
Excellent. When doing tours like this, so first of all, I think what I want to know is, were you always interested in this kind of history, the history of the paranormal? Is this something you like kind of grew up researching and learning about, or did you just find it in adulthood?
I really fell into the ghost stuff in adulthood, but as a child I was obviously a baby queer, and I loved me some queer-coded villains. So I loved like witches and that sort of thing. Like I saw The Wizard of Oz and I immediately knew who my girl was. So it was sort of like Disney villains, and villains evolved into like being kind of fascinated by I guess like Captain Hook really is like one step away from Louis XIV if you think about it with the look.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I was very inspired by definitely like villainy, which drew me to sort of like twisted history. And of course I didn't really interrogate what I was researching as like a teen or a child, but then as I grew up, and especially getting closer to like especially the witch history here, it's taken on new meaning for me, certainly. But the paranormal, I have this is ridiculous, I am the fraidy cat in these streets. I actually, before I moved, Actually, you and I are like, I have not taken a single ghost tour in my entire life because I'm such a scaredy cat. Actually, like, ghosts terrify me. And I've become a little bit more, I don't know if I like the word desensitized, but no, and I think it's even more than a desensitization. Now I'm actively interested, especially in like why we tell ghost stories, and like, because of course ghosts tend to be vengeful, tend to have untold stories, and this especially like as a queer guy, like hearing about these people who, usually a ghost is like haunting a place for a reason. They might have been, we have a lot of like marginalized ghosts, especially in the US. It's stuff that I feel like it's sort of definitely skeletons in the closet if you're giving an American ghost tour. So I don't think I was always into ghosts, but since I sort of fell into ghosts by nature of being here in this city, and I knew a lot about witch history, and then I learned about the ghosts so I could give this tour, I've definitely like fallen in love with the paranormal, though I'm still very, very afraid of walking home at night. I kind of walk very, very fast sometimes because it's a terrifying little city when you're all alone and the crowd leaves. But yeah, definitely an interest in like gothic fiction. I love me some Crimson Peak. I love all of that, though I have to watch kind of like with a pillow over my eyes sometimes, or like with somebody who knows or has seen the film, because I am very frightened. But I love, it's inevitable that I would eventually come to ghosts and give ghost tours, I think.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned being a scaredy cat, because I too am a scaredy cat.
Oh my God.
We have that in common as well. But I find fear my relationship with fear as an adult is different than as a kid. Like as a kid, I was a crybaby and I was terrified of everything. Like to the point where like my father took me to see Roger Rabbit in the movie theaters, and I don't know how familiar you are with Roger Rabbit, but
harrowing.
So at the end, when Christopher Lloyd's voice goes up and his eyes pop out as daggers, I swore off movie theaters for like 4 years as a kid. I was like, I won't go back. I'm terrified. Like,
oh my God. It was Disney World's live Bug's Life experience for me.
Oh no!
With like that was it for me. I was carried out screaming. So you and I are part of a noble club here, which is
a noble club.
Oh my God!
But as an adult, like I've engaged with it a little differently. Like last October, I've been streaming on Twitch, streaming games, and I started doing it a lot more over the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic. And I had a free copy of Dead Space, which was this revelatory horror game that takes place in outer space, and I've heard great things about, and I've had a copy of it for ages, but would never play it because I was terrified. Like, so terrified, like I played the original Resident Evil, which was campy as hell, and still couldn't get through it. It was so scary. But I decided to stream, like I put it to a vote to my followers, and I was like, should I stream this scary game for Spooky Month? Like, let's have fun together. And of course it won, and like it was terrifying to play, but there was something about having the chat with me and like people engaging and like talking about how much they love the game, and being with them on this journey made it less scary, but not scary.
Yes.
And like made me engage with it in a different way. And I get the sense with your ghost tours, it's the same thing. Like you, even as a scaredy cat, are engaging with the stories and the gothic in a different way. So you're able to sort of be brave about it because you're in control, right?
Yes.
You're controlling how it's going. And I think that's fascinating when we're in control of fear and we're like, I'm using it to my advantage. Now, that said, I still get scared sometimes. I still can't watch a lot of horror movies, but like I feel like it's different now as an adult because we feel like we have more control, whether we do or not.
Most certainly. And before I say what I'm going to say, I have a question for you. It's very important. Are you going to play the next Resident Evil game with the very tall lady?
So, as a resident member of the queer pantheon, I, of course, am a monster fucker and love, me a good monster. And was too also attracted to the tall lady. I don't know if I'm going to play it because Resident Evil 8, I think it is a sequel to 7, which was in first person for the first time, was scarier than a lot of the previous versions because they'd gone downhill, I heard, around 5 and 6. But like the story I've seen with the tall lady and some of the other stuff that's come out about it, I haven't played the demo yet. I am interested. I am curious. So I don't know. There's a demo, I think, that's on the PlayStation 4 that I haven't downloaded yet. It's probably less than an hour. I might download it just to try it and see how I get. But I feel like with Dead Space, playing it for my viewers, I might be more inclined to try it. That said, I won't play it at night in the dark. Like, I refuse. Handily. Like, it will have to be like when I was doing Dead Space, it was before I had my current day job, so I was doing it in the mornings a couple of days a week, and so like I felt at least there was sunlight. Like I felt like the things couldn't get me, as it were.
Yes, that's how that works.
Right, exactly.
Didn't you know? No, this is terrible because it is. I still don't know if I would. I think I might take a ghost tour, but it is definitely like I can dish it. I cannot be served it at this point, where it's different, where like they don't know I'm terrified of like the different sites we're going to, but it is a different thing, especially I think with the control thing. It's like, oh God, I don't know, everybody's gonna start psychoanalyzing me real fast, but like definitely scaring a crowd is it has its own reward to it, like telling the story and definitely like guiding people through this experience because they're very susceptible. They come there to get the spine tingles and that kind of thing. So I think that's the only reason why maybe you're helping me learn something about myself.
I mean, if I've accomplished anything, I'm happy to have accomplished that.
Yes, but why maybe I can engage with, and I'm glad that this was like a doorway in because I've loved sort of getting closer and closer to the horror genre too. I've felt a little bit braver too. This made me watch like what is that brilliant film? Oh, shame on me, I don't remember the director, but The Witch, A New England Folktale.
Oh yes, I have heard of that.
That was like that was like baby's first like real horror movie because I was like I have to watch this because I was so nerdy. But yeah, for whatever reason I fell into this. I'm glad I fell in, and I'm glad that you you had your spooky game experience too.
Yeah, and I mean, I have my spouse to thank for driving me towards some horror movies more now than before too. Like, I'm a big Jordan Peele fan, so when Get Out was happening, like, I had hesitance about watching that movie, but I'm so glad I did, and I loved it. And of course, I saw Us as well, and so like, I think if it's not just jump scares, if there's suspense and there's narrative, then I can watch a horror movie. But like, my experience as a kid were with like the slasher movies and like, you know, those kinds of things that just have all the jump scares. And I don't know that I can do that. That said, I'm also endlessly fascinated with watching other gamers play horror games, because I feel like we're being scared together if I'm watching them play it versus playing it myself. Which is, I mean, I guess it's the shared experience, right? It's, you know,
Absolutely.
Horror isn't as scary if you're not alone.
Speaking of, this is, oh God, I had a feeling that I was going to fall into talking about this with you. Okay, all this that we know about one another now.
Yes.
And how you kind of are on my level here. Can you believe? And I never play. I rarely play video games because I know that they will consume my life.
Sure.
I will love them too much, and they will consume my life. But okay, over the past few months, I have been very, very brave. Can you believe I've gotten very good at playing a killer in Dead by Daylight?
Oh, I can believe that.
This is, and a survivor.
Nice.
But I think this is. I was talking actually to Lute Alfred about this. About why I could stand to play it, and this is sort of like the shared experience thing too.
Yeah.
Because I started playing with a group of all like dear friends, so like I knew who the killer was,
Right,
and like that kind of thing. And also, I love Dead by Daylight because you can choose like which side of the extreme like power dynamic narrative you can be on. Like, do you want to be the survivor running around, or do you want to be the slasher? And like, I love that Dead by Daylight is not gendered. Like, there's different, like you can. It's like a killer isn't a gendered role.
Yeah.
It's like there's Huntress, and like you could also be Mike Myers, that kind of thing. But I know nothing about slasher movies. I don't know who half of these killers are, but that's the one and only solitary video game that I've played, and it's ridiculous if you know my other tastes.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I know Dead by Daylight. There's a bunch of streamers that I'm fans of who play it, and I've not yet played it, though I do have it. But like, I was always fascinated with that game too. It just seems so interesting. And like, I'm a K-pop fan as well, and so like, they recently introduced like a K-pop theme.
Oh no,
killer.
yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I guess I'm playing Dead by Daylight now, because hello.
When you do, let me know, because this is now of serious interest.
Excellent. I do want to shift the conversation a little bit to your incredible Patreon, the Hellfire Club, and talk about, which I get a sense just from your Twitter, which is how we've interacted the most, your love of the queer, arcane, erotic, and occult.
Yes.
What led you to do this? I mean, it sounds fascinating. It's a really cool idea. And you say in the description of it that it is born out of your ghost tour life, and like this idea of engaging with a community that likes this stuff in a pandemic world, which we are currently still living in, unfortunately.
Yes.
So what kind of led you to this and the inspiration to start to build this kind of a Patreon?
So by day, I am an artist and I make a lot of things, but I haven't really found like a niche or anything like that. But I definitely wanted to supplement tour money with something that I loved. And I didn't necessarily want it to be my art. I do just a lot of sketching. I do tons of photography. I'm just getting into voice work. I was trying to think of a way I could possibly supplement that income that I had lost, if we're getting real about this here, with something that still like fed my soul, because that was important to me. And then like I randomly said yes to giving. I hadn't given ghost tours for a long time. I said yes to, it's a really, really cool community and of scholarship called Romancing the Gothic. It's like a lecture series that's sort of on Twitter. And so I randomly gave like a Zoom lecture, and I had the time of my life, like sharing different aspects of the trials and really talking kind of even more in depth with people. And that lit me up so much. I was like, that is it. I do so much historic research and like just as a hobby. I figured like making a Patreon about specifically just stuff that like compelled and titillated me might be enjoyable for other people, and it would really just function as an excuse for me to go deeper into stuff that I love. It was something that I figured could be really sustainable and that I think other people would enjoy, and definitely like it's been very, very cool. Just the patrons that have like gravitated to it already. It's such a fun group. We had one virtual meeting already, and it was a blast. But that's sort of real talk about what led me to do the thing. And it's been really, really rewarding and super fun.
That's awesome. I love that. I think it's interesting. Look, we're living through the pandemic has been hard on any level for any person. And I feel like, I mean, like I know you also tangentially through the burlesque community and through the community of live art, which is obviously suffering right now, and it's really hard. And finding a way to engage with people on a level that, and an intimacy even that you can't get from live shows anymore, is so hard to find in a virtual space. And I think doing something like this, especially about something so specific, allows you to find like-minded people that you would at a burlesque show or at a theater piece or at a live event or like a FlameCon. Like, and it's much more difficult to do that now because a lot of us feel like we're starting from square one. I think it's also really cool that you did a play reading not that long ago. I mean, it feels like long ago now because everything feels long ago. But with Lud Alford and a Goldfarb, a former guest of this show, and a bunch of other great actors. How did you get involved with that? You said you're starting to do voiceover and everything. Has acting always been a passion as well?
Oh my goodness, this is such a wonderful can of worms. I actually, predictable, went to art school, which, yes, I went to school for acting, which is kind of how I fell into, of course, like loving history and getting an acting degree.
Right,
tour guide, there you have it. In terms of like something that I can do that I really enjoy. And I definitely, I was in college in like the early 2010s. And there was just no place for a trans male actor. Maybe there was, but I definitely wasn't shown the path, you know, that I could possibly take to make that sustainable. Loved performance, but didn't see it as like a career option. And I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm glad, but there's definitely like blessings that have come with not pursuing that. I'm super fulfilled in a different way now. But performance has always been a part of my life, and certainly storytelling. And yeah, I again randomly said yes with the calamity happening to reading one of my very, very favorite plays, The Importance of Being Earnest. I think that's the one you're talking about. Yes. And oh my God, it like opened up a whole new world of possibilities to me, where like it was the first time that I performed in a space where I was celebrated as myself with my actual name, playing a character that aligned with my gender. And it was so euphoric. I immediately, so many of my dear friends have already been, oh my God, I'm thinking of Josh and Dallas, and they are phenomenal voice actors. They're some of my dear friends. They sort of like gave me like a helping hand into the voice acting community after I expressed that I had so much fun doing this virtual reading, that sort of over the summer I really started auditioning and getting into things. And now with Fireside Folktales, I am going to be voicing the Sheriff of Nottingham coming up, and I'm voicing the Duke Orsino with What You Pod Productions, and that one is already, both of them are recording right now, and I am having the time of my life. And I love definitely like doing audio. It's such a different pace and a different world than live theater, and I really, really, I think I get along with it in a way that's, I don't know, there's certainly like more possibility with audio and radio drama. And of course I'm like a baby, I'm a fledgling, but I'm really enjoying myself.
That's awesome.
That's a long answer to a short question, but I said it was a can of worms.
This is a long form podcast, so that is A-okay with me. I mean, honestly, I could listen to you talk forever. You have one of the most captivating presences I've ever seen, and I think that's,
shucks.
It's true though. Like, so The Importance of Being Earnest was a play that I don't know that I've ever even actually gotten to see live. So when I heard that Lud Alford was doing this, I was really excited. And also, like, all of my friends were in that. You know, Victor was in it, and Jeff was in it, and Reynolds.
It was a motley crew.
It was just such a great crew, and I love that it was born out of Abe wanting to play the lead matron role. Has always wanted to play that role that was, you know, that wasn't his gender, and like so. Like there was gender swapping in this. There was like it was just the queerest thing I'd ever seen, and I loved it so much.
It was a riot.
It was so good. And also the instant, like what's really interesting to me, and because I've watched live burlesque shows and live theater over Zoom, and sometimes the chemistry isn't there and sometimes the mood isn't there. Like it's hard to feel the energy through a screen. But I felt like with that reading, you all worked so well together and were so charismatic that I got sucked into the performance in a way I hadn't watching video performances before.
Oh my goodness. That's magic. I'm so glad.
I mean, and it's also fun to see people that I know. Like I know Jeff. Jeff and I have been doing a video game podcast together for many years. We worked together in the burlesque scene. I should say I worked with someone who looks remarkably like him in the burlesque scene.
Yes, of course.
But also,
there's a lot of doppelgangers running around, and I love
right.
them all.
But also, like I had hung out with Luke and played D&D with him, and like I had just didn't know the capacity for the acting and for the performance until I got to see this. And also, like Jeff and I connect on a lot of different levels, but for whatever reason, our queerness never comes up. I think we're just naturally ourselves, and so to watch him flirt with Luke on screen was so fun for me because I just, it was masterfully done. And I think what I loved about watching your performance is that you were absolutely that character the entire time, and like made me believe that you were, I mean, ostensibly putting your foot in your mouth in that, as that character. And it was,
you should see me in real life.
But it was done really well. And I think that and so I'm very excited to hear that you're doing voice work as well, which I know Jeff has done for a long time as well, because I think that you absolutely have the voice for it. Like I said, I've been captivated with the stuff that you've put online, and that's what urged me to want to do this interview. Also because I didn't actually know that much about you because we had interacted so briefly in the internet space. And so I'm glad that you're here to do that. With the Hellfire Club, I wanted to ask, are there certain kinds of themes and topics that you're looking to talk about? Because you're acting, again, and voice acting, will you talk about occult film and occult books and stuff? Like, have you kind of decided what the syllabus is going to be like for that kind of stuff without giving up the ghost completely?
It's honestly, I'm so committed to only researching things that fascinate me, and right now that looks a lot like like very, very naughty history, very, very queer history, and like diabolical history and the intersections of all of that. And actually I think it's the syllabus for what's going on in there might be best explained by talking about the name.
Yes, please.
Because it's very cheeky. So the Hellfire Club is a reference to the Hellfire Clubs of the 18th century. And this is one of my very favorite intersections of the erotic and the occult, excuse me. There were a ton of Hellfire Clubs popping up in and around London in the 18th century. So 18th century, for anybody out there, just think buckled shoes, powdered wigs, the whole 9 yards. And there were so many different secret societies for aristocrats especially that were cropping up around that time. And Hellfire Clubs were a very particular kind of secret society. A lot of these exclusive clubs and let's be real, specifically like the 1% elite gentlemen, they were just like 18th century jackass situations. It would be just a bunch of guys, maybe pretending to talk about work or philosophy or coming together for that reason, but then getting absolutely hammered. The Hellfire Clubs, they are secret. They are certainly awash with booze. They definitely had an erotic element to them as well. But what set them apart is there were rumors flying around town that these gentlemen who were part of Hellfire Clubs, and they were named all different sorts of things, but that's what we can categorize them as. These gentlemen were damning the Trinity. They were speaking about atheism. The rumors got wilder. They were summoning demons. They were inviting the devil to sit down to drink with them. What was actually going on in the most famous Hellfire Club, which sort of has the... It's sort of there's a misconception that there was one Hellfire Club. This is because there was one that was particularly wild, and it was these gentlemen called themselves the Friars of Wickham, and they rented out an abbey for these late night erotic parties with the guys. They would invite a ton of courtesans and sex workers from Covent Garden, and they would throw these bashes in this abbey, in the chapel of this abbey, and they would dress up like monks, and they would perform blasphemous rites, and it was just absolute edgelord madness. And of course, since they were secret societies, the only reason why we know about them is there was one man who leaked a little bit of information, enough to sort of be very petty and bring down the career of one other member, but we still don't know just about everybody. What little we know is that it was a really, really blasphemously, sacrilegiously kinky sex club that also talked about atheism too. And so this is just wild, and I sort of chose this name because I never want to take myself too seriously, certainly, and it is this moment in the Enlightenment, which is sort of the age of reason, when this, and we're talking specifically Western Europe, a Christian society is finally interrogating Christianity and parsing out what is science, what is magic, what is divinity. And then the Hellfire Club's popping up in a post-Salem witch trials world. So the Salem witch trials happening in like 1692, right? The Hellfire Clubs are coming, of course, in the like mid 1700s after this, when witchcraft, like the specter of witchcraft and the specter of Satan that the like Christian supremacy relies on people being afraid of, is finally not so scary to these gentlemen, where like they literally were like inviting Satan to sit down. That's so like fascinating and delightful. The Hellfire Clubs were just the most merriest middle finger to the dogma that had, sort of pervaded the culture for so long. But again, it has everything that I love in a moment in history, which is we have this bizarre sacrilegious sex club. There's a lot of alcohol. I'm a amateur mixologist too, so you'll find on like the Patreon a ton of like, I just started like giving cocktail recipes, that kind of thing, and of course this element of witchcraft. And I find that there's definitely not, to the Hellfire Clubs, like a element of queerness. Maybe there is, but I love the name so much because it is cheeky, and it is. I love the Enlightenment has a special place in my heart in terms of that particular moment of like a society rallying against the church and that kind of thing. Even though it is, of course, just these absolutely awful aristocrats, but I want to reclaim the name from them. It's mine now.
I mean, I approve, and I think that we need a little debauchery in the world that we're living in now.
Yes.
Respectful quarantine debauchery until we can be debaucherous in person.
Yes.
Never goes without saying, because there is no shortage of stupid people ruining it for the rest of us. But see, what I love about that also, and like to someone who doesn't follow you, they won't understand this, but I do, and I know you will. You have an aesthetic. You have an aesthetic that you put out for sure on Twitter, and this absolutely fits it. And you mentioned earlier your photography, and I want to talk a little bit about that because you post such stunning photos of yourself and these places that you visited, especially when you go to like cemeteries or on your ghost tours, when all that kind of stuff. First of all, I love them. Never stop taking photos of both yourself and
Thank
other
you.
things.
It's a habit. I couldn't
But
if
I'm
I tried.
curious, where photography fits into all of this. Is photography also something that you've just kind of always done? Like, I consider myself someone who can frame a shot now because every idiot with a cell phone has a way to like sort of help themselves to take decent photos. But I'm curious, like, what kind of camera you use and like how you got into this kind of photography.
Wow, it's such like a constant and very like natural part of my life. I actually don't think about it so much. It is like compulsive and it's a habit. I've done it. It feels like journaling to me. And I've always loved photography. just again, amateur photography. I definitely took like film classes when I was very young.
Sure.
I'm talking like high school, you know, like film the like morning announcements kind of situation. But I don't, right now I shoot like with my iPhone. I would love to get a proper camera if I go back to portraiture, but like small cameras, they're just so incredibly powerful now. I don't know if I could justify it yet, because it's just like the ease and the access. I find just like photographing my life to keep me present. Actually, a lot of people feel like they're sort of taken out of a moment, but it's such like, and I don't of course always have my phone out, but when something strikes me, it's just like a reflex. I'll like catch the light and move on. So I try not to like plan shots or anything that heavily. It's just sort of like noticing something that I find beautiful, if like the clouds are a certain way or whatever. This sounds so woo. There's really no like rhyme or reason to it. It's just I've done it all my life, and portraiture specifically is something I've been so craving getting back to. And I don't mean this in a formal way, but sometimes I do like stage formal portraits of people, or in quarantine I've been staging formal portraits of myself, because that's all I can do. That's who I got, you know. Me and my dear friend I live with. But portraiture is like so almost spiritually important to me, and because especially like, oh man, photographing people and having them take a look at the photo that you took and being shocked that that's them, that they could possibly look that beautiful or that radiant, or just that somebody getting so absolutely dumbfounded by how they look in a picture that I've taken is one of the most rewarding things ever. And I'm actually hesitant to get in front of many cameras. But I hope after the pandemic, I'm going to be a little bit braver, knowing this about me as a photographer, that I will take some of my photographer friends up on taking more shots of me, because I find it super like gender affirming too. And like people who truly know me or truly see me, who can shoot me, it's been very fulfilling. But I cannot wait to get out there and do it again. Just sort of like having casual shoots with friends and that kind of thing. I certainly don't intend to ever do this in a formal capacity, because it is just a habit and it is very personal. And yeah, again, it's sort of like a diary, and I shoot with my little old iPhone. Once upon a time I had like a Canon Rebel camera, but
I love that. And like, I love specifically how you said the idea of journaling, because like even things like Instagram and Twitter are often compared to be like very self-absorbed, right? Like you're taking photos of yourself and posting about yourself. Yeah, selfish. And I just, especially as someone myself who's been working on so many projects and is constantly trying to promote them and get people to listen to the things I do and see the things I do, I eventually push past this point of seeing it as selfishness, because it's survival artistically. You have to show yourself and talk about yourself in order to survive, especially in the pandemic. And what I love about your photos is, and I hope someday to have you shoot me, because I love how you see the world, and more importantly, how you see, like, for example, I take photos of myself all the time when I'm promoting stuff or posting stuff online for streaming or whatever else. And usually if I think a photo is fine, I'll post it, because it's rare I look at a photo of myself and go, damn, I look really good. But then there's occasional moments where I take a photo of myself and I do really see myself as an attractive person. And that kind of like, I didn't, you know, it's like you're talking about, people aren't always capable of seeing themselves. And so when you can see them for who they really are with a camera, and then they're baffled by it, like I think that's such a powerful thing that we don't talk about a lot, because the idea of the selfie is considered pretty self-absorbed. And yes, of course, sometimes it is, but I also think there is art to taking selfies and taking photos of yourself, that because you can force people to see you as you see yourself, right? You can go, this is me. It's very like confident to do that almost.
Yeah. And so necessary, I think, to like see yourself reflected, and to like, especially in the pandemic when like so much is so nebulous and like ephemeral now, and it's just like so hard to track. I found it's like especially important. It's almost like grounding. I'm so glad that you take selfies and that everybody takes selfies. There's a historic precedent for this too, where like we can look at, of course, aristocrats are getting their portraits done and like positioning all of their lovely things that meant things to them behind them, and that of course we can see as, yeah, obviously that's a status thing. But we have like, as soon as silhouette portraiture, like in the 19th century was made available, everybody's gonna go get their silhouette done because they want to give that to someone they love. They want to hang that in their home. This is like, we just have easier access to our silhouette portraiture, basically. And I do think it's very important to see yourself reflected, and in a way that, oh, it'd be so wonderful to baffle you. I love baffling anybody. It's just like, that's such a magic moment where like you can really relay what you see back to people. Not in like a cookie cutter prescribed way, but something like you can really like catch someone's energy. That's why they were so terrified of cameras, actually, isn't it? If we're talking this kind of thing, they were worried that there would be like a sympathetic magic when the camera first came out. Like if you would take someone's photo, you would like steal part of their soul, or like that kind. Do you know about this?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I actually think is a little bit true. I mean, I think it's very, very cool.
I do too. I think like, if someone's capturing your essence, they're capturing your essence. And I think it goes even beyond photographs. Like I was very lucky. I know this incredible performer and artist, Logan Laveau, who does not only incredible burlesque, but she also does incredible art. And I was trying to figure out what to get my spouse for our 5-year anniversary last year. And so I commissioned her to draw us. And I gave her some suggestions. But I'd seen her drawings of other performers and other people, and I loved her work. And I was like, here's like we're both work within the world of podcasting, so there should be like maybe microphones and headphones. But other than that, like, here are some of my favorite colors. I want you to draw us how you see us. And it's such a masterful piece of art that we have hanging and that I love, because I got to see what Logan sees, because she'll see us probably even truer than we see ourselves sometimes. And I think, like, not just with photographs, but with drawn art and painted art and like personal art, I think also captures the same kind of awe. And I'm always in awe of it. Like, I've been lucky enough to have a few people do sketches of me and fan art of me, and every time it blows my mind, whether I've commissioned it or someone does a doodle. Like, I treasure doodles as much as I treasure commissioned art, but like, it's fascinating to me to see how people who can draw and paint capture that kind of essence in a similar way. And it always baffles me.
Yeah, that is so fantastic.
And so I'm curious, like, when you're sketching, like, I know for a fact, like, Abe Goldfarb's user picture on Twitter is one of your glorious sketches, which I love.
I'm so honored. Yeah.
When you're sketching people, do you find it's the same kind of skill set as photography, or is it completely different?
Oh my God, I'm gonna confess something to you. I love drawing portraits, but I just can't. I take so few portrait commissions because for me, the ease of catching someone with a camera, this is just the tool or something. I can do that in my sleep. I could almost shoot someone blindfolded and get them. For me, drawing doesn't come as easy. I really had to learn. It was just like doodle in the margins kind of thing when I was younger. And then someone at some point wanted to give me money for one, so I sort of did. That's truly, I don't feel as skillful, or I don't have the same ease capturing someone that way, and I don't know why, but it's I try to relay. It's just harder for me to nail it if I ever nail it, but people have been very, very, pleased. I'm thankful, or at least they've said that they're pleased with their portraits, or pleased enough to make it their icon on Twitter. But it's, oh God, it's, for me, you hear the dread in my voice right now?
Yeah, there's more stress to it. I can hear you talking about it.
Because I do really give a fuck,
Sure.
And I think it's because I'm just not as confident in, I draw for fun, and drawing a character is so much less pressure than like doing a portrait, because it is like sacred work. Like what you're talking about, is it's so important to like see yourself realized, you know, especially through someone else's eyes, because we're also hard on ourselves, and we might hold, and of course we hold like so much more magic and presence, I think, than we ever give ourselves credit for. But like, oh my God, yeah, it's very stressful because I know that it's important to people, you know, that I get their nose right, or I'd rather just have them in front of me and have them do the work. Like, they're just there. I just have to kind of like translate what I see. I feel like it's so much harder to translate with a pencil than it is with a camera, but I really enjoy doing it. It just feels a little more white knuckle to me because it's very difficult for me. But
that's legit. I mean, like, I'm the kind of person who I've been interviewing people for a very long time, and I'll sometimes still get butterflies before an interview, especially like, for example, like tonight, I would consider us friends, even though we've never really had a full conversation. But that said, I was a little nervous because we've not had a long conversation before.
No, I haven't. We've just been like, and this year too with the virtual, and like parasocial relationships, which are really bizarre. I don't feel that ours is parasocial at all, because we're definitely on the same, we're peers, you know, that kind of thing. But no, it's so bizarre. But like interviewing is such a, like, you really, like, you have to be deftly skilled to make it look like you're not doing anything at all. Like, do you find that this, like, how is this how did you fall into doing this? Now I'm interviewing you, but I'm very curious because
I love it. So some of my favorite moments, and I wasn't trying to prompt this, is when guests ask me questions, but also what I was saying before is, like, you're talking about like white knuckling. Like, I love interviewing, but when I'm on a show being interviewed, the lead up is excruciating because I just like, well, first I'm worried that I'm going to be too much, because of course I worry about being too much or too loud. Welcome to being queer, right? Like, we always have to be loud and be present.
Please don't. Yeah.
But like, I do get nervous because I'm afraid, like, what if I talk too much or I take control of the conversation? You know, like, I've really had to rein myself in when I'm on other shows. But how I came to this is really selfish. Like, I was listening to other podcasts that had interviews and went, I can do that, and I want to do that. I want to meet these interesting people. I want to talk and have interesting conversations. And I just decided to up and do it, and had almost no resources at the time. And now I'm very lucky to have more resources and have to have talked to so many incredible people. But it's not like a lot of people talk about growing. Like, I guess when I was a kid, I kind of wanted to, God, this is going to date me a bit. Like, remember when VJs and DJs were a thing, when we had radio stations?
Yes.
So, like,
once upon a
time, I grew up listening to a lot of K-Rock, which was the New York rock radio station, and there were always DJs on doing interviews with musicians and talking to people between the songs. And I was always like, I want to do that. That's really cool. You get to know about the people who make these things. And I never really pursued it. I did a little radio stuff in college. You know, my local college had a radio station, and I interned there for a bit. But, like, it wasn't until I started a music review podcast with friends of mine, which is now on indefinite hiatus. I always say it instead of saying it's dead because, you know, hope springs eternal.
We'll do some necromancy.
Exactly. But like, I did that show for a long time, and then we started having guests bring albums on to review, and we would interview the guests. And I was like, oh, I'm pretty adept at this. I'm pretty good at this. And so eventually I selfishly just went, I'm going to make my own show. I want to interview musicians myself and do it. But then I didn't get bored of only doing musicians, but, like, I was running out of the indie rappers that I knew personally, and I was like, I need new guests. I need different guests. And so then I expanded to the burlesque scene because I was DJing within that scene as well. And then I expanded to photographers and artists and magicians and actors. And now it's pretty much anybody who will say yes to talking to me, I would love to have a conversation with. But the goal was...
And here I am.
Here you are. But the goal was always for it to feel casual, right? Like, I want the guests to feel comfortable. And I can guarantee I can point to interviews that I've done in the past, thankfully not many, where the guest is just kind of there, or the guest isn't really involved in the conversation. It's a lot of short answers, and that's fine. They happen. But this kind of discussion like we're having, that just feels like we're hanging out, sitting by a fire, drinking tea and chatting, is the goal of this show. And I think it comes from me being, I am horribly introverted and extroverted at the same time. It's a constant pull and push, to the fact that like I can be an extrovert forever until I'm not, and then the minute I'm not, I cannot be. I have to go home. I'm done. And thankfully that's never that doesn't often happen in places where like I have to shut off in the middle of whatever I'm doing. But like, but there's something about the conversations with podcasting that have felt personal in a different way that I could go forever. I could just keep doing it. And I think it's because I don't interview people I don't like. I think that's the start, right? Like, you know, there are plenty of shows that interview everybody, like your late night shows. They'll interview whoever comes on, whoever's got the next big thing coming out. But like I seek out people and voices that I think don't always get to be heard. And also it's important to me to seek out queer voices and voices of color, because it's very easy to have a long list of straight white guys on shows. And I know plenty of other shows that do it. And I'm not even putting them down for doing it. Like those folks are louder. So of course, and they're not marginalized. So they're doing more and seen more. But like this kind of a conversation is more important to me, to put light on a creator that I like, that I think is pretty cool, that other folks might not know about. You know, and I don't know that there was a specific like starting point for wanting to do that, but it's definitely what Autographs has become now.
That's really, really incredible. And you started talking about this, and you said that it was a selfish move on your part. Did you just hear anything that you that just came out of your mouth?
Yeah, I know.
You can call it whatever you like, of course. But I would call what you did like quite bold and confident. Not it anything there. If that's selfishness, I have a completely fundamentally different definition of selfishness. I will just have you know. If you since I'm here and you are asking for my 2 cents, that is all I will say. But I think it's really cool.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. And yeah, I guess we're always taught, right, to not. Like media will often tell us to not believe in yourself, to not be loud, to not be present, to not push forward. Like, you know, I remember when
you sound like a Puritan.
Right? Like, you know, I remember, I can't remember who it was, but I had some follower on Twitter who was like, you post too much, or you post your stuff too much. And I'm like, well, then I guess don't follow me. Like,
this is my house.
Right, exactly. It's astonishing. I'm sure you have no experience with this as a queer person on the internet, but people coming to your house to tell you that you're wrong about whatever you're doing.
Oh, yes. I wouldn't know anything about that.
All.
You're right.
And so that's why I think that, like, well, thank you. First of all, just thank you. I'm trying to be better about accepting compliments, which, you know, is like, I'm for someone who's more confident now than I was in high school or college. I still have trouble taking compliments, and I'm trying to be better about it, which I think is a fairly natural thing if you're humble literally at all. But
yeah, that's, I mean, such a challenge.
To completely deflect away from me and put it back on you and the conversation we're having.
If you insist, I will allow it. Before
we wrap up, I would love for you to just tell folks where they can find. First of all, I want to thank you for this conversation. It's been truly enlightening and a delight. And I'm hoping that we can spend more time in physical space once, you know, we're not all suffering from a pandemic.
Yeah.
I think that would be lovely. But I would love for you to direct people to where they can find your Patreon, where they can find you, and all of the stuff that you make, because I really want to drive people to check out all the cool stuff that you're doing. Sure.
So on I'm only on 2 platforms. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Mr_S_Crane. So that's Mr. S. Crane. And in all my bios, there's links to the Hellfire Club. I don't think we're searchable on Patreon because we're 18 plus. But if you just type www.patreon.com/the Hellfire Club, it should come up for you. And let's see. Yeah, on Instagram and Twitter, it's just more of my personal stuff. I definitely talk history a little bit, but there's a lot of photography. There's a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of... just like, well, you'll see. But the Hellfire Club, just very quickly, yeah, it's all like queer, arcane, erotic, and occult history. We just did, or I just posted about like a Dionysian festival that's sort of we'll see if you No, I'm not. No, I'm gonna go for it. Yeah, absolutely. We talk about like my latest posts. They talk about like there's these bizarre charms in ancient Rome that are like little flying phalluses that actually people wore to ward off the plague.
God.
So that is the latest post you can find. But yeah, and Patreon, if you don't know, is a subscription service sort of. So you can sign up to make a payment monthly to stay on the page and view the content. There's a $2 tier. That's the lowest tier that I offer. You can get weekly history every Friday. It's like a 500-word something to read over breakfast. Again, it'll be something witchy, something to do with historic sex, or something to do with a queer figure in history. And at the $2 tier too, you get invited to our virtual Hellfire Club meetings, which we meet every month or so. We had our first in February. It was a salon, so we had the violinist Lulu Black and the author Leanna Renee Heber, and we were chatting. And in May, it's going to be a book club. And then there's, just very briefly, $5 and $10 tiers offered too for extra content that will give you access to like long form essays where I really sink my teeth into material with like analysis of some like different factors of like gender and class, and I just kind of get to dive a little bit deeper. You get access to my reading lists if you're a bookworm, and other content. I'm definitely doing some personal photography that relates to things that inspire me, that I get that I sort of stumble upon in my research, and cocktail recipes too, if you're into that sort of thing. But yeah, that'll be the Hellfire Club on Patreon, and Mr_S_Crane wherever else I am.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Sebastian, for taking the time. This was delightful. The last thing I'll have you do is we have a saying on the show. It's born out of the music show that we were just talking about. And the saying is, music is life and life is good. It's this idea that as long as you're creating, even when life is hard or tough or difficult or really has you down or really bad in any way, if you are fulfilling yourself by creating, life is going to be okay. So if you will say, music is life and life is good, we will close out the show.
Excellent. Music is life and life is good.
That's it for this episode of CPOV Autographs. Our theme music is by Michael Kill. Our logo was designed by Case Aiken and Joey Amons. If you liked the show, please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. It's a great way to help us reach more listeners. Questions, comments, or guest recommendations? Email mr.nat.storm@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at CPOV Autographs. Thank you so much for listening.
Hey there, Screen Beans. Have you heard about Screen Snark?
Rachel, this is an ad break. They aren't screen beans until they listen to the show.
Fine. Potential Screen Beans. You like movies and TV shows, right?
I mean, who doesn't? Screen Snark is a casual conversation about the movies and television shows that are shaping us as we live our everyday lives.
That's right, Matt. We have a chat with at least one incredible guest every episode, hailing from all walks. We've interviewed chefs,
writers, costumers, musicians,
yoga teachers, comedians, burlesque dancers,
folks in the film and TV industry,
and more.
We'd be delighted for you to join us every other Monday on the Certain POV Podcast Network.
Or wherever you get your podcasts, fresh and tasty off the presses.
What? That's not...
Can I call them Screen Beans now?
Fine.
Screen Beans!
So tune in and we'll see you at the movies or on a couch somewhere.
'Cause you're all Screen Beans now.
She will be mine. Aurora.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.